We are gathered here today to discuss Marvel's growing criticism over canceling and also delaying and sidelining several Black-led projects and characters. This has been a peak thing that people have been talking about recently, especially I feel like maybe with the whole doomsday situation. I think this is the last straw for a lot of people, but I think people are already noticing that even far before we got that trailer. So we've been seeing this over and over. There are several examples, unfortunately. Like, yeah, for example, Wonder Man, which has been canceled after one season. You have Moon Girl and the Devil Dinosaur that ended after just 2 seasons. And you also have Blade that was delayed years after its 2019 announcement. You have Armor Wars that is still yet to be scheduled, is unscheduled. You have Monica Rambeau's future remaining unclear after seeing her in a couple of Marvel projects. And then you have the topic of, of course, like I mentioned, the Marvel's doomsday situation when it comes to Anthony Mackie's Captain America, which seems to be maybe perhaps being sidelined, but that's kind of what it's looking like right now. And I really want to discuss this because I feel like it delves into other aspects. Like, this isn't just a Marvel situation. This is across the board with any Black-led media. And I also want to emphasize too, this isn't just a Black issue, this is any non-white issue as well when it comes to any non-white character, and a lot of non-white characters not being taken seriously. But I especially want to focus on the Black part of it because I feel like that does also touch on non-white groups as well. This is like an overall issue, but it's very disappointing to see because this has happened time and time again, especially in 2026, and with everything that's going on within society. I would hope that a big studio like Marvel would delve even deeper into really showcasing these the diversity in these different characters and the non-white characters as well. Not necessarily saying that they need to be propped above white ones. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that not backing down from representing the diversity that Marvel is, because Marvel is very diverse with many different people from many different backgrounds, many different races, and so it's very sad to see that they do not seem to value that, or that doesn't seem to be something that they value, to be able to stand up for these characters and stand up for these character stories, and instead they're treated as disposable. So I really wanted to talk about this because it really delves into different aspects, and it's really an overall issue. It's tough out here. I'm like, goddamn, can we catch a break at any point? I don't really know, but I'm ready for a break. I think we're all tired. So one thing that I've clearly noticed is that the past couple of years, especially before Trump whole thing when he was reelected into office or whatever, like before that, we had this big praise for quite a while of diversity, wanting to see diversity, loving to see the diversity. Marvel specifically, and just Disney, or even just across the board, right? This push and this praise for diversity within media, within these studios, and seeing that these studios were, we're delivering on that. Like, it was nice to see that we're getting these characters that, that we could see and relate to. You know what I mean? Like, it just hit different. Of course, with the shift in society and the landscape of the, the culture and things like that, now all of a sudden, they're quickly dismantling everything they have done prior. So pretty much everything that we got from the past, they're pretty much getting rid of it. So dare I say that it's more of a trend than anything else. It's not genuine. It's always been a trend for them, because at the time when people were advocating for more diversity, they were greenlighting diverse projects left and right, because this was like peak, for the cultural moment. It was peak. This is what people wanted, so this is what they're going to give us. So seeing these big corporations or these franchises and these studios, whatever, like completely reverse their course is very sad and disappointing to see, especially because you have the anti-woke. I don't like to even really use that term, but that's the best way I know how to say it to where people might understand or know who I'm talking about or what I'm talking about. But these people that are always anti-DEI and just hating to see the diversity and whatever else, whether it doesn't matter. And so it's very disappointing and sad to see that these studios are folding under pressure, or I guess pressure, right? To please this group of people now who are louder than ever. Why? Because they can feel like they can be that way because of the political state of things. With that being said, it's very disappointing that these studios are not buckling down, especially during times like these, and having our back at least. Instead of that, what do? They get rid of us. They're like, ooh, that's not the trend anymore. They're out. We're going to focus on this other thing. So in regards to studio and industry mechanics, it's very interesting to see how, because everything is about money, right? Everything is about money with these people. It's always about profits, what's going to make them the most money. And so with Marvel's recent fumbles, I think it's causing Disney to panic. So what are they going to do? They're going to revert back to the nostalgia baiting. Now that's why we have Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom, while we have, legacy leaning white male leads coming back or whatever, like this safe nostalgia thing. I don't think diversity has anything to do with them flopping. It has everything to do with their storytelling and the direction that they're taking the MCU into. And it's just ass. It's ass. To be at the point where we are the ones at the chopping block, when really I feel like it's like writing issue and choices that they've made that aren't the best choices, but yet we're the ones that are kind of being the scapegoat or being the ones that are kind of being punished for that, it really does suck. I'm like geez, like goddamn. And I've seen a lot of examples, or some examples of like soft cancellations, which would be like an example of like how Blade is being treated, Armor Wars, and how pretty much they're being stalled in development hell. It's pretty much like a corporate tactic to avoid bad PR for outright canceling, these projects, and instead hoping that by starving these projects, the momentum will slow down and people just forget that it was even a thing in the first place, right? And then you have disposable hits, like I would categorize Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, and also Wonder Man. Despite their Emmy nominations, they are pretty much being cut because of corporate metrics and prioritizing immediate blockbuster hits that are going to bring in that money. So they're choosing that over sustained diversity and community building. And like I said before, these are some scumbags, like genuinely. And I think, like I said, I'm at my wit's end with this whole situation. It also bothers me the fact that even when we do see diversity within like some of these characters, like I feel like some people might debate, well, this wasn't really that good or that wasn't really that good. I feel like a lot of it has to do with the fact that, at least for me personally, right, like I'm not against having Ironheart that's taking up the mantle after Iron Man, or Sam who's taking up the mantle for Captain America. I don't mind that, but my thing is, why do we come into the fold or become important only when it's taking up a legacy character's like mantle? Like, how come we can't have our own thing? Like, there's so many other black characters that are so interesting, but I mainly focus on the black characters because I see it's a lot with the black characters, right? There's so many cool and interesting black characters within the MCU that have yet to be talked about, that I feel like would have been so much more interesting to see, rather than to see this era of black characters. Not saying that they're any less important, I'm not saying that. The reason why I say it is because also, I'm like, we've already seen Iron Man, we've already seen Captain America. We're not really getting anything necessarily new or interesting besides the fact that same character, different fonts type thing. You know what I mean? Like, I think it'd be so much cooler to get black characters that like they have their own legacy to be had. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's my thing. I feel like it's kind of cheap. Just like I feel like about race swapping, it's cheap. It's a cheap thing to do. You know what I mean? Representation, cool, great, but I don't like that half-hearted, half-ass representation that we've been getting within media. And this is one of those things that I feel like is half-ass, half-hearted, which is why, like we're seeing, they're easily able to just disregard those characters and kind of just sideline them and then bring in, they served their time. They brought in the money when we needed it. Now we're going to pivot back to something else that's going to be a little bit more beneficial for us and the company, whatever we're trying to, push. But that's the thing that's tragic about the situation. I think the issue with these projects, is to get back on track, is that like projects are, it's not the issue of them being delayed or canceled. That's really the issue. It's really just the fact that Hollywood treats diversity like it's temporary, like it's a temporary trend rather than a permanent creative commitment. And I already hate the idea of diversity being something that's seen as like optional or something that's disposable. When you look around you in your everyday life, most likely you're going to see a lot of diversity, depending on where you are, but majority of the time, you know what I mean? Like, especially living in America or whatever, it's like there's diversity everywhere. And even in the MCU, right? The MCU is vast. There's like diversity within species, whatever, it doesn't even matter. And to be kind of confined down to just like a little aspect or a small like aspect of that is very limiting. And so to see that even within our world, like, or what we're seeing right now, is that diversity is seen as something that's optional. You don't need to have that type thing. When I feel like it should be a default. Like, that's just the reality that we live in, And to see that in media, I feel like it's understandable, it's realistic. So why is it always this political thing? That diversity has to be something that's like, of course I know why, but it's sad to see that this is still something that we're having to deal with in big 2026. There's clearly a lot of work to be done here. And I also want to talk about Sam Wilson's Captain America again as well. This is a character that was established to be important, that was meant to become the moral anchor for the new MCU. And so with all these massive delays, these reshoots, and Marvel pivoting back to old guard multi-universal like nostalgia, it's sad. And it's kind of concerning to see that Sam's era of Captain America is being visually and narratively sidelined before it even gets to be, gets off the ground really. Like, they're just really starting to establish him as his own, as a character. And we see something similar with Monica Rambeau as well, and them introducing her in WandaVision, and we also saw her in the Marvels. And, she ends up being trapped in a literal alternate universe cliffhanger. I think it's a perfect metaphor for like how black characters are being placed in narrative limbo while the studio decides what direction they want to take it that's going to be safe for them. And usually a lot of times that just means that we're just going to sideline the character, pretend that we're just going to slowly just stop showing this character. Not even slowly, just completely just not show them anymore until people like forget about them or whatever. And with these two projects, it's pretty clear that they didn't receive a grace period. And I feel like a lot of times, especially with white-led projects that are undergoing or underperforming or facing some type of delays, are usually given a course of correction, or at least like a massive budget protections, or at least have budget protections. Well, you know, black-led projects are immediately sidelined or canceled like at the first sign of friction. Like there's no fight to be had to preserve these characters or these stories, or to continue to tell these stories. And I feel like there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is that these projects, these non-white projects, are not seen to be, or they're not even created with the intention of it being a long-term project or something that is supposed to have any real long-term significance within the overall story, right? Like they're disposable. Like they're not really necessary. That's why they can just be sidelined or delayed or canceled altogether, because they're not really respected. It's sad to see, especially a project like Blade being completely disrespected after many people made the point of how Blade saved, you know, the studio. You know what I mean? And for it to be disrespected, especially right now, is ridiculous. And of course, I couldn't make this video without addressing the woke versus anti-woke dynamic and how studios are reacting to the societal tension and what's going on these days. Diversity is definitely treated like a trend, like I've already mentioned before. It's definitely more of a trend than an artistic conviction. You know, a lot of the anti-woke community is all about, we don't want to see these people, we don't want to see these type of people within media and everything that's going on politically, to see that these studios aren't doing anything to combat that or to protect these creators, to protect these artists, is a thing that's very, very disappointing. Is that there's nobody here to like stand up for us, to push back against it. Instead, you fold and you go to please these people, because why? It's all about the money. These people are more bold than ever. Look at the political climate. These people are more bold than ever voicing their opinions and their bigotry, because they're so intimidated and scared of not making any money. They're going to pander to these people rather than doing what's right and doing what they have been doing. But it's disingenuous. So of course they're not going to continue to do what they're doing, because why? It was all about the trend anyway. It was all about how can we make money with this phase of society and what's going on in society right now. So just to be clear, these projects are not failing because there's a lack of talent or because the audience is not interested. I think a lot of the audiences are interested in these stories, but the reason why these projects are not succeeding is because they're not, like I said before, they're not built for long-term success. Real representation would require studios to actually give grace, to actually be patient, and also offer financial protection to these black stories during tough times, especially like how they do for, you know, the traditional blockbusters. And also the reason why this is so important, even just beyond Marvel, is because, you know, Marvel is one of the biggest like studio like franchises in the world. You know what I mean? Like the amount of money that it makes, I don't think there's anything else that makes more money than Marvel does, especially when it's good. When Marvel's good, it's good. I guess you could say they do set the tone for the film and television industry. So by them doing this, everybody else is going to do the same. And so in my opinion, I'm not telling anybody not to support Marvel or not to, you know, not to go see these movies, like whatever. Like I fuck with Marvel. Like I'm not gonna just not go and support certain Marvel projects that I find interesting, but I also do feel like it's important that as customers, as people who are actively paying to see this content and stuff like that, also, if you can, support like actual like independent artists or creatives that are actually telling stories and who actually support, you know, diversity or these different things that you believe in, because they don't rely on corporate permission to create this. So I feel like, you know, these are the type of people who are passionate about telling good stories, who are actually like taking action and representing what it should look like to have proper representation, diversity, and telling good stories overall, right? Because that's really what it's about. It's about telling good stories, investing in people who are actually actively doing that. I feel like it's very, very important. Protect our artists at all costs, because these corporations are not really looking out for us. They just want our money for real. And we see that time and time again. But anyways, that's all I got for this video. I just kind of wanted to quickly talk about that. And unfortunately, as much as I would hope and I would wish that things could be just as simple as just telling good stories and diversity being a default and not really being like something that feels like it has to be forced, like they just have to do it just because they feel like they have to, but actually just it being a natural thing and just telling a good story with good characters, well-rounded characters, is very sad that it's not really the case. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video.